right, welcome to the cyber resilience panel. In my research for this panel, I've seen that this is one of the hottest topics of the whole year, cyber resilience and cybersecurity. And I just wanted to encourage the audience here to please feel free to ask questions as we go through the discussion today. We have just about an hour. And before we get started, I just wanted to have each of my panelists introduce themselves to you, and then we'll get going. But I'm going to start down there on the end with you, Peter.
Piotr Danowski, partner at Warsaw office of Bird & Bird, head of IP Tech and Comms media practice. I hope you are not tired of me because I'm already speaking on the third panel. But each time something different, so hopefully you can bear with me again.
Very good.
Hello. My name is Gert-Jan van Hardeveld. I'm a specialist at the European Cybercrime Center at Europol, which is in The Hague, for those of you who do not know. I mainly specialize in cryptocurrency, but also cybercrime more generally. So happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Marco Gabozzi. I work at Bulletproof, a GLI company, managing director, responsible for the EMEA area. Been in the gaming industry for the past 15 years. As Bulletproof, we assist many different type of industries: healthcare, finances, SLED, university, but specifically in the EMEA area, we are highly specialized in the gaming area.
Hello, my name is Jan. I'm from the EY. I'm cybersecurity lead in the EY Czech Republic. We are focusing with my team to cybersecurity resilience, especially for the financial institution and for the energy sector. So I hope that our experience will be useful for you in the gaming business as well.
And I'm Becky Leggero. For those who don't know, I've been around the gambling industry for nearly 20 years now, but now I have more of a focus on the blockchain world through CoinGeek.com. And yeah, so here we go, guys. But actually, this is Gert-Jan's first online gambling industry event here. So I wanted you, first of all, Gert-Jan, to please just explain to the crowd here, what is the European Cybercrime Center? What are you doing there?
Yeah, I assume not everyone knows exactly what we are doing. So it's actually, I guess most of you have heard of Europol. It's the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation. But it doesn't mean we're like the FBI, so we don't arrest people ourselves. But what we do is we facilitate cooperation between law enforcement agencies and deconfliction. What deconfliction means that, like, if, for example, Czech Republic has a suspect, Germany has a suspect, they might not notice of each other, but we might know, and we might be able to tell them and to better facilitate cooperation and actions. So again, that's also a big part of our work. Is majority of the work is operational. So we, in the Cybercrime Center, we have teams focusing on cyber attacks like ransomware, DDoS, supply chain attacks. We have a dark web team. We have a team fighting child sexual abuse. And maybe most relevant for this sector, we have a team fighting online payment fraud. Perhaps if you want to read a bit about one of our recent cases, it was a case against Lockbit. You might have heard of this. It's a big ransomware family. So we did the coordination between, I don't know how many countries, it was like 15 law enforcement agencies. But it's not all we do. It's not, we don't only take the ransomware offline and prosecute the ones responsible, but also something we do is prevention. So now we have taken down this ransomware, and we found the decryption keys for this ransomware. So if you or your company gets attacked again in the future, we will have decryption keys, which we have available on the platform No More Ransom. That might be relevant for you to look at. And yeah, we have many other prevention campaigns, like on SIM swapping, on mobile malware. And maybe last thing that I would like to mention is that we, since a year and a half, we can now receive information directly from the private sector as well. So to solve organized crime and terrorism. So if you're aware of any major schemes, please talk to me afterwards. And maybe last thing I want to say out of personal interest as well. So I'm mainly, large part of my work is tracing cryptocurrency, so tracing criminal cryptocurrency payments. And recently I've seen a few cases where funds, so stolen funds, ended up with online gambling platforms. These platforms are not here at the conference, so don't worry. But maybe perhaps I also like to learn from you about this, if you've encountered certain practices, and maybe we can speak about this afterwards as well. So, thank you.
Very good, thank you. And I think in a previous panel during this conference, Peter, I heard you say that it's a regulatory jungle. I think those were your words out there, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a lot that online gambling operators and companies just really have to be focusing on now. So I wanted to start the discussion here by having you guys dive into some of the regulatory challenges that we have going on. And Peter, I'm going to start with you on this one. Let's talk about DORA. What is it, and why should we be caring about DORA when it comes to cybersecurity?
Sure. So DORA is the abbreviation for Digital Operational Resilience Assessment, and it's the first EU-level regulation which deals exactly with what it says in the title in the financial sector. The problem was that, of course, before DORA there were other regulations dealing with operational resilience in the financial sector, but they were much more focused on dealing with, let's say, the consequences of disruption to operation of financial institutions and dealing with financial risks. So rather putting obligations and burden on the financial services providers of having sufficient funds secured that in case something goes wrong, I don't know, someone hacks the bank account or there's any other leak which disrupts the system and the customers of the financial institutions lose their money, so that the money can be given back. I wasn't too much focusing on the actual digital resilience being the true ICT security issues. And what DORA is aimed to do is to fill in that gap and provide for the standards which all the financial institutions have to meet with regard to making sure that the ICT systems they are using are secure, that the proper risk assessment is conducted, and the measures adopted are relevant to these results of the risk assessment. So it's not just that we put whatever firewalls, other software and so on, but we never made these assessments, which should be always the first steps to make sure that the measures that we are implementing are really relevant and necessary to address the potential risks that we as a financial institution can face. But it's also about requirements that the third-party providers of platforms and systems for the financial institutions need to meet, because let's be honest, it's not the banks or e-money institutions and so on in most of the cases who produce their own platforms that they use. Yes, there are third-party providers, software companies which prepare those. So of course, because it's the part of the ecosystem, and if the platform as it is manufactured or the manufacturer of the platform is safe, then whatever the financial institution can do will not be safe either. And I mean, financial institutions themselves, then they don't have tools or knowledge even to be able to verify whether the platform they purchased is fine or not. So that's why the second part of DORA is not just on the obligations of the financial institutions, but what the third-party providers of the systems, of the platforms for the financial institutions have to meet. And then, of course, it's a regulation, so it's effective, directly effective in all EU member states, which is also very important. And a bit of the learning that the EU took from the NIS or NIS, depending from which country you come from, one directive, because the problem with NIS 1 or NIS 1, which is now trying to be addressed in NIS 2 directive, is that, okay, it provides certain guidelines, certain requirements and so on, but with the directive it needs to be implemented in the national law. And the problem was that if you look at the implementations of NIS 1 in different member states, they're like from left to right. Some of them are very peculiar, and you have a lot of extra burdens, even on top of what the directive speaks of. Very high fines, a lot of competencies for the regulators and so on. And in some other countries, you basically look, and probably half of the violations of NIST regulation you can easily take on yourself, because the fines are so low that actually you can put it as a part of your business risk assessment and decide, okay, it's cheaper for me not to be compliant and get fined rather than be compliant and not get fined, which means it doesn't work because that's the type of the regulation which needs to be, harsh enough and painful enough when you're not compliant to really be compliant, and of course everyone should understand that all those regulations are not really harsh, just that the people want to comply because they are afraid of fines, but there's really deep sense in those regulations. And if we want our ecosystems, especially financial ecosystem, which is important for the whole economy these days, and if it goes down for whatever reason because it's hacked or the service fail or whatever, and it's just simply down, everything will be down these days, because we are so dependent these days on digital payments, transfers of money electronically and so on, that if the financial system is down, then basically everything is down. There are probably two sectors like this these days, or three. Telecommunications, if you think about connectivity, payment services when you think about the flows of money, and energy sector when you mean basically electricity, because of course everything else without electricity doesn't work either. So in short, that's it. We could probably talk like 2 hours just about that, going into
it's a jungle.
Technical norms which are still in the making for DORA, and what this mean and how they should be implemented and adopted and so on. But
Yeah, it's a whole conference in itself. Again, I know that when you talk with your clients, I'm sure these regulatory directives, all these things are coming up. Do you have anything to add to DORA, NIS2? What your thoughts on this, why it's important?
Yeah, I will bring the opposite or the second point of view. The colleague talked about the DORA. I will speak about the NIS2 directive. If I can say one word about the NIS2, it's evolution, because the NIS directive came in the 2013, I guess, the first version. But if you remember how your mobile phone looks before the 10 years and how it looks today, you can see the difference. Today you have the more data in your mobile phone, it's connectivity to more systems. In your domestic, in your home, there is a lot of the automation. For example, the fridge have the camera, and this evolution, like in your home, coming into the business as well. So today, you don't want to be affected, for example, by some cyber attack will disconnect the city electricity, for example, or the cyber attack will affect your shops, banks, and so on. So that's the reason why the NIS2 directive will be updated, and the main changes are in the scope. So today will be regulated more services. They are recognizing two types, essential and important. So we can say that one type of services will be more regulated or more strictly regulated, and the second one will be a little bit less regulated. However, in these services are included all essential and important services which you are using in your daily business. So we can say it's the government parts, it's hospitals, food and chemical factories, etc. In the Czech Republic, we expect that there will be regulated more than 6,000 new companies. In the UA, we can say about 100,050. So really a lot of the companies will be new regulated. Expected the DORA. The NIS is directive, so it must be transposed into the local legislative. In the Czech Republic, for example, we have a proposal new cybersecurity law, where are the requirements which need to be fulfilled by the companies. Motivation, which is the NIS2 directive brings the motivation for the companies to be compliant, because expect of the penalties, where we are talking about 10 million euros or 2% of the global profit. There are the responsibilities of the governance institution to stop your business or stop the CEO function for the few years, for example. So we are talking that there should be the motivation that the management of the companies will be responsible for managing cybersecurity, will be responsible for implementing the cybersecurity in their companies, and they must be regularly informed about the cybersecurity posture in their business. And maybe the last information which I would like to bring. We performed the market research at the beginning of this year, how well are the Czech companies are ready to the NIS2 directive. And we see that more than 25% of the new regulated companies don't know that they will be regulated. And we can say that the regulation will be active at the end of this year. So there is a really short time to check the security posture and prepare some implementation plan. And maybe the last information, or interesting information from other research, that 50% of the respondents who don't know about the NIS2 directive are from the management board. So we are talking about the people who will be responsible for the implementation, the directive in their companies.
Very good. Thank you guys so much. And to tie this back specifically to the gambling world, the online gambling world, I'm going to have Marco talk a bit about some of the regulatory challenges that are out there when it comes to cybersecurity for our iGaming friends. What, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges there?
Is another jungle, basically. I think 10 years down the road, the majority of the country now in Europe are regulated in terms of cybersecurity for gambling. The sad thing is that a lot of time, those regulations that don't really support cybersecurity resiliency, but they became rather a checkbox for a lot of organizations. So they own internal security that they value, and then they have a checkbox for the certification that they feel just to be a burden for them, right? And I really cannot blame them, because the complexity is so high. There's 20 plus different regulations that have to be on top. Some of them, they partially make sense. Some others are fairly good. But when you put all of them together and you fit them in different certification schemes, then it really becomes a jungle for them. I think on top of that also, as I mentioned, all the regulations come from the same ground. Basically, a set of controls heavily inspired by the ISO 27001, especially the Annex A. But then each and every regulator makes sure to put on top some gaming-specific requirement that sometimes drives company crazy, right? Some of those requirements can be quite challenging to achieve and don't necessarily make sense. Then, where, for example, the regulation should improve is the way they require penetration test is sometimes not clear. It's not clear whether it should be the operator doing it, the B2B doing it. Generally, has to target the external infrastructure, so the external IP and the application, but that's definitely insufficient. You have only one regulation in Europe that would require a review of your firewall. Right? That's shocking to think about it. There's only one regulation that requires social engineering, right? And we know that attacks like ransomware, for example, are mainly exploiting people rather than system, right? There's very few regulations that require an internal infrastructure pen test. What does it mean? An internal infrastructure pen test goal is to understand how much damage, how far you can go once the external defenses are bypassed by an hacker, right? So it should be fairly, key information, key understanding for any organization to know, but only few regulation, require that. In general, unless, regulators are able to move the perception from a checkbox to something that is useful for those organizations, they will never comply in deep with it. And, they would rather do their own security based on their own understanding, based on their own budget, rather than having maybe one European regulation that look after, players after all, very well, right?
Very good. Thank you, Marco. And Peter and Jan, any other comments that you have about DORA and IS2 for the online gambling industry specifically that you wanted to share? No? Yes?
Maybe I will just comment. I'm optimistic because the DORA and the NIS2 brings the new perspective how to be compliant, because if you remember the NIS2 directive, there is, as you said, there is the checklist and you are going, I have this document, I'm compliant. But NIS2 directive say you have to be resilient about the attacks, and that's the something which you are not able to be compliant just with the documents. That's to be documents to be implemented into the practice, and the cybersecurity program in the company must be functional.
Like, for example, there is a progressing demand from regulator to comply with the full ISO 27001 standard, so to become ISO 27001 certified. So in some way, there is a better awareness right now that might lead, to what you just said, but I think we are still a little bit far. And definitely, initiative like this that are really aimed to spread, our concern when it comes to have so many fragmented regulation out there that becomes, a jungle to drive through, right?
A jungle. Does anybody in the audience have any questions about DORA, NIS2? Nothing. Okay. So now, we do have a question. Yes, please.
No, there's no one single jurisdiction that requires everything, but for example, the only jurisdiction requiring social engineering exercising, that can be exemplified as a phishing exercise, physical exploit of the location is Romania, right? And the other regulation that requires firewall rules review is Italy, right? But as you can see, there's not a single regulation that would embed best practices as a whole, right? So luckily, a lot of these companies, they have to comply with multiple regulations. So at the end, they get through pretty much everything, but is a lot of time environment is segregated. So it's funny, like you might have a company that the environment for Italy, they're going to do firewall rules review, but then for all the other jurisdictions, they simply don't do it. And that's because they don't see the value in do it, they don't perceive the value, but they just do it because the regulator asks. Right?
Great, thank you for the question. Please keep them coming, guys. So now that we have the regulatory jungle stuff out of the way, let us talk a bit about future tech and cyber resilience. And Gert-Jan, I know that you were saying that you are focused on the end customer. Let's talk a bit about the crypto world and some of the ways the companies can help prevent scams and hacks when it comes to customer wallets and some of the experience you've had there.
All right, sure. So a big majority of the cases we see are scams. So I think if you as a company, if you want to start accepting cryptocurrency, you also have to think about how can I educate my users to use it, because you don't want to, of course it's not your primary interest, but I think you want happy users and you don't want them to fall victim to scams. So a lot of the scams we have seen are, for example, poisoning attacks. So I don't know if you heard of this, but let's imagine in your wallet you have your address, and an attacker will post a very similar address. They will send a transaction from a very similar address to your wallet, after which the user will think, oh, this is actually my address, so I'm going to send now funds to this address. This attack has actually, there's even been a law enforcement agency that has fallen victim to this attack. You can read about it in the news if you can find it. Yeah, I think it's very important. Also, for example, if you, as a company, like how do people transfer cryptocurrency to you? So you might have a standard address that you always reuse, or which might be also dangerous because you might fall victim to poisoning attacks again. Yeah, so you really have to think about that. For example, like, do I only accept these payments in my app? Do I generate a new address for every client? Do I provide guidance on how they have to make these payments, etc.? So maybe one other thing, in relation to accepting crypto. So if you want to accept crypto, you also need to be able how to trace it, because you basically need a blockchain tracing tool. Otherwise, you're never gonna be able to say, where did the funds come from? Are they criminal? You need to think of, where do I report it to? Is it like the FIU in my country? Is it the local law enforcement? Or if that's the obligatory reporting, but then also on a bigger scale, if you see many of the same types of frauds happening, maybe you also want to share it with Europol, for example. So, yeah, maybe last point I want to mention, because so that we've seen a lot of hacks in the past. And I think part of it is like proper cybersecurity and proper key management in place. So in the past, we've seen private keys being held by one person to the entire wallet of a company, which is not very smart, as we now know from many cases. But so there's many wallets that allow for segregated keys, so you can have, let's say, all of the executives or the ones that understand hold a part of the wallet. So they all have to sign it before certain major transactions can happen. I know a few companies that actually do so for if they have to do any major decision, any major transfer of funds, at least 3 executives have to sign a transaction, which would significantly diminish the chances of one person losing access to all of the funds.
Mm-hmm. Super good points. Very good. Anyone else on crypto world? No. Okay. So let us talk a little bit about AI. Marco, I'm looking at you. What's the impact of AI on cybersecurity? Is it helping hackers? Is it fixing the situation? What's it doing?
Well, AI is a tool, right? So it can be used by anyone. It can be used by testing lab. It can be used by black hat, white hat. Of course, it's not mature technology yet. But definitely not just on cybersecurity, but in general on our life, our civilization. It's going to be a game changer. If we think about the exponential improvements of AI in the past couple of years, that's going to give us a measurement what's going to happen in the next 5, pretty much, maybe not even close. At Bulletproof, I think I mentioned to you, Beck, we are a Microsoft partner, and we have the privilege to help them to test the Copilot AI. So we have been kicking off a lot of internal projects, to see what are the potential and how can simplify things in our organization. And some of those projects are within my department, specifically for the assessment that we do in terms of cybersecurity. So, for example, pen tester, they largely use it at this point. Again, as a tool, they might use it to write exploit. So it will cut down the time to write exploit dramatically. We might use AI, for example, to assess documentation, identify prevalent risk in a very short time frame, so that we can focus on more valuable activities for our clients. That's really a big range of game changer activity that AI can be do on a testing lab like we are doing, for example. Besides all the administrative task, is really in the way that you, for example, build methodologies. We can do things like we can input a new full regulation, ask AI to compare this regulation with existing regulation, ally to us similarities and differences. Based on that, we can ask AI to identify if there's any of our internal methodologies and processes that fit that type of assessment, and if not, help us to develop it in a very quick time frame. What does it mean? It means that we can help our clients with a better time to market because they don't need to wait for us too long to be ready to test them for that specific jurisdiction, right? And that's just, you know, on the lab side. Now, if think about on the criminal side, right? That's even more interesting. So I'm not sure if you know, everybody knows, but the very first version of ChatGPT was without filter. And one of the first things that was done, basically they asked to get a list of banks, sites, and vulnerabilities affecting those banks. It's very known things, right? So then, of course, they would filter limitation. Now you cannot do this thing anymore. But I'm pretty sure that on the dark web, there's, you know, AI out there specifically training by criminal for criminal, maybe for free, maybe you pay, you know, but that can do a lot of damage, can simplify steps like reconnaissance, for example, or passive research of your targets. When it comes to the criminal side, I think the biggest potential definitely is on the social engineering side. That can help you massively to profile your clients, to identify relationship with the third party and vendors, can give you in a very short time frame valuable information about specific sites, how many people work there, what departments are there. At the end, you know, those type of AI, they are basically just you know, gathering information on a large database, amount of data, and synthesize that for you in a way that you can quickly review it, you know, and make decision based on that, right? So I think, you know, social engineering is gonna become more and more extreme in this sense. There's video out there, for example, of AI impersonating a salesperson and actually selling better than humans. The same way, exactly, this AI can trick someone thinking that they own IT and they need the password set or whatever, get some sensitive information right out of it. You will not be able to distinguish at this point, right? If you think also that there's AI out there that with the 30 seconds of your voice can replicate the way you talk, right? Here you go. You know, you have the perfect murder out there, right? Now, obviously, you know, AI, especially gambling organization, but in general organization, they can make use of AI also for their own benefit. Primarily, you know, very easy to think is improving intrusion detection, intrusion prevention. AI, they have a great capability of learn quickly, self-learning quickly. So right now, for example, one of the big problems with IPS and IDS is the very tedious, expensive, and I would say a complex process of tuning up those tools in order not to have a lot of false positives. Right? AI can solve this problem pretty quickly. At Bulletproof, also we have a security operations center. Where basically what we do is we monitor connection for many different organizations. And we are currently embedding AI in there, right? Because it's going to help us to detect threats in a faster way, in a more accurate way, and not disrupt, you know, clients' operation with no reason, right? Not sure if happened to you to get your credit card blocked after you did a legitimate payment online simply because is a little bit out of your spending habit, right? That's something that AI should be able to improve. Yeah, simply because maybe you can get information that you went on a specific website and you checked this product before, so it will be legitimate for you to buy, right? So those are the kind of positive improvements that AI can bring. Now, would I feel safe if I have a pen test performed for a client of mine 100% by AI? Absolutely not. You know, the technology is not mature yet. I'm not sure if it will ever reach that point, but as a supporting tool, I think is very great.
Very good. I'd like to think there's more positives than negatives for AI, even though we like to focus on the negatives a lot, but let's hope. Okay, so quantum computing is another fun buzzword that we hear a lot out there. I'm sure some people don't even know what that means. Yeah, and I know that an area that you focus on is helping your clients be quantum ready. And can you explain to us, first of all, what that even means, and second of all, how that ties into cyber resilience?
We help to be quantum ready, one of the big bank in the Czech Republic. I can say that the important it's the mapping of the current key management. It's very similar as the colleague mentioned regarding to cybersecurity of blockchain. There are the very similar rules. It's necessary to be assess which type of technology you use, which type of cryptographic key or cryptographic algorithm you use, and you are offering them what you can do. Some type of algorithm will be quantum ready, for example, if you will extend the number of bits. Some key will not be ready, and there is the need to change the technology as the complex. So, for example, we are building some type of quantum VPN, which is the use for communication with the ATMs and core banking systems. Some types of key will be possible to change. So that's our approach and recommendation in the shorts.
Very good. And my personal favorite buzzword / future technology, blockchain. Peter, how can blockchain help superpower our cyber resilience effort? Jan's laughing. Tell me how it's involved with instant alerts, no need for third party, this type of thing.
Well, so again, blockchain like AI is a tool, so obviously can be used for all possible purposes. So of course it can be used for positive purposes, but you can also have some uses with some of the cryptos which are probably more concerning. But as a general tool and the mechanics of working, of course, blockchain is something which is terribly useful if you need to protect the integrity of the data and be able to trace if there were any manipulations or any other disruption to the data. Because the beauty of blockchain is that it's decentralized mechanism, so you don't have like one database, one server or whatever, where all the data related to, let's say, transaction with tokenization and so on, everything is actually based on blockchain, so it's not in one place. So even if, let's say, hackers are able to hack that site, access the data, manipulate it, there are still millions of mirrors of the same block, so it will logically not work. That's how blockchain is constructed. That's changing even the smallest element of one of the blocks in the chain results in the whole chain kind of falling off. So from that perspective, of course, blockchain has and will have certainly a lot of applications. It already has a lot of applications in different industries. You know, there are systems, for example, related to the trade in diamonds in the world, where you can trace the origin of the diamond, and there's combating of those so-called blood diamonds coming from, let's say, illegitimate sources in Africa and so on, where you get certificates which are based on blockchain. Then you have those non-fungible tokens now, a big thing in the, let's say, art world, where you can sell not the actual painting or a book, but its tokenized digital version. And again, you can check whether it's legit and then comes from thanks to blockchain. Actually, we had a very interesting story around that in Poland, because Poland had one of the very first transactions worldwide concerning a sale of a token of a painting of one guy. It was a huge auction, and it ended up with a very big price. And then it turned out that actually the certificate file for the token is missing. It was actually impossible to verify the authenticity of it, because there were problems with checking the issuer and everything. So even though it was, the auction was organized by the largest auction house in Poland, and the painter is pretty famous, and it was a big buzz in all the media, and then it turned out that actually probably it was a kind of a scam in the end of the day. So of course, to use blockchain wisely, you need to know how it works and be aware of those things, not just think, oh, I have a NFT and I got a nice certificate hand signed and sealed, so I'm happy and everything is fine, because then when someone knows how to check it, tells you that actually you bought an empty bag. So that's very important to be aware of this. But again, I mean, going back to all the issues we discussed before, I mean, the main thing to remember is, yes, first we need to be trained and aware and make ourselves aware, because if we don't know how the things work and they are getting more and more complicated, that's it. At least from the technical side, and all of us are not engineers, so that's complicated, but it needs to grasp the basics of those things. We need to do that, to be able to use wisely and understand what we are doing. But second is, there are all those elements involved always. So there's always a physical security layer, which is there and will be there, even though we are moving more and more into digital. But there's always some physical component down to that. So physical, then organizational, which means not just training, making people aware, but also having procedures, policies, and so on, and really working policies. And of course, all those risk assessments and so on, so to make sure that what we have still is able to respond to the potential threats that we have. And then, of course, all those, digital resilience, so ICT security in the purest sense of, making stress tests, firewalls, and whatnot to make sure that the installation goes.
Please, Jan. Yeah.
Maybe I will complete the topic. As you mentioned, there is the very important the certificate and the key management. And by the way, you don't want to see how looks the certificate or key management in the Czech banks, for example. It's a very difficult discipline, and I can say that that's very important to ensure integrity of the blockchain platform, because the blockchain is just the level infrastructure. Under the blockchain, you have the database, you have the key management, and etc. So the key management, and the second, smart contract. Smart contract is something like the boot code, for example, and the smart contract give you a look how the platform will be works. And if you will compare the smart contract with, for example, mobile application or web application, if you will do mistakes in your web application code, you have the chance to repair it. But if you have do mistakes in the smart contracts, you don't have the second chance.
Very good. Yeah, and I love how you guys say that blockchain is a tool that we can use for our cyber resilience efforts. I know of a company called CertaHash that it gives real-time alerts to their clients, and you can trace back everything to its point of origin, so you know exactly where the problem occurred and when. It's time-stamped forever. So super cool tool out there. Any questions that you guys have about future technology, cyber resilience, anything? Any other questions about anything else? Okay. All right, so Gert-Jan, I wanted you to talk about ways that we can work together, the online gambling industry and other industries, to strengthen our cyber resilience practices. I know that you actually host some events, I think, and things like this, ways we can collaborate.
Yes, there's a few things. So as I mentioned before, we have a few prevention initiatives that ideally, like normally we only get involved when it's too late, but ideally, because of the prevention initiatives, a bit less. So one of the things that I mentioned was the no more ransom. So if your organization is attacked with ransomware, for example, we do have quite a few decryption keys on that platform. Of course, we don't have everything because not all the ransomwares in the world are yet taken down, or decryption keys are yet available. But we do work with tens of cybersecurity companies and tens of law enforcement organizations, dozens, I should say, that do provide to this platform the decryption keys. So this is maybe one thing. Also, we provide a lot of reports, threat assessments. So we have different insights than companies do because we get information from law enforcement. So we publish every year, for example, the Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment, which details what were the most popular attacks this year. We have similar reports for the financial sector, for financial crimes, and for organized crime, which I don't know how relevant it will be for you. But this can at least make you aware of the current trends and what to focus on. And finally, I guess in return, we would like to see visibility. So we like to know what kind of scams do you encounter, what kind of cases do you see, so that we also know how to better allocate our resources.
Very nice, thank you. And then if we can talk about ways that you can help, the panelists here can help the iGaming industry specifically when it comes to cyber resilience. Marco, I'll start with you. How can you help iGaming operators and companies with their cyber resilience practices?
Actually, we try to increase awareness in general. For example, we provide free of charge training to regulators to make sure they are on top of the latest technology and they understand the concept of cybersecurity that eventually should assist them to draft better regulation. We do the same things with our client. We try to help them to move from a checkbox mentality, so just do it to comply, to get the value out of it. In general, also, we try to help them to optimize the investment. Right now, many occasions, you have this weird setup where they pay for the certification, then they pay for what they consider real security, right? In many cases, we have been able to help clients to optimize the investment in the sense that, for example, we can undertake for them a ISO 27001 certification to get a PCI certification to get a regulatory certification, right? So they don't need to pay for these things 3 times. They can optimize the investment, right? And that also brings away the concept of checkbox, because let's give for a moment that your compliance is granted, right? So what is the value you want to get from your investment now? Let's look under the real security perspective, you know. And when they change a little bit the perspective on this, you know, things generally improve, and they have absolutely no issue to comply with regulation at that point, right?
Very good. And Peter, I think you were saying that you don't necessarily have a lot of iGaming clients, but you could. In what ways would you be able to help the iGaming operators out there, maybe with audits and all sorts of goodies when it comes to regulation?
Well, I have many iGaming clients, but not in cybersecurity space.
But I had that a bit wrong.
That's
yes,
probably because they are, as we discussed before, not always actually aware of the fact that that's one of the areas that they should more look into, because they are more accustomed with, like, we need to do AML, we need to do that sort of compliance, but cybersecurity is probably still not yet that high on iGaming agenda. So what we do as Bird & Bird, of course, we are a law firm, so obviously we do the legal stuff, so we can help, first mapping all the applicable regulations, and as we discussed, there are quite a few which can apply to various aspects of the things, and plus not everything is just harmonized at the EU level, so you still need to know the local implementations in most of the cases, but also the local flavor and how the local regulators approach the issues, how aggressive they are, what things they pay more attention to, because that still unfortunately differs from country to country. So compliance, everything, I mean, all the preparing of the procedures and policies, but quite often we do the projects jointly with our partners to be able to provide not just the legal expertise or the compliance expertise, but also the technical expertise. Because obviously you can't do all of those things without also doing the stress tests and actually going into the systems of the organization and checking what's the, let's say, status zero on the day you start your work, because as it is with many other things, and which, for example, also GDPR shown when it was implemented, there are many instances where organizations are actually not aware of certain things that they have on their systems. Some old app which was installed 30 years ago, no one ever remembered about it or updated it, and actually it can be the weak point, which turns out that once you break that one, you can go 7 levels deep into the system, into much more serious things, that shitty whatever communicator for the PAs which you installed 30 years ago in your organization and never used ever since. So all those things need to be properly mapped, identified, risk assessed, because some of these might be, there is a vulnerability, but the potential impact of that vulnerability might be fairly low, or it might turn out that something which seems to be quite irrelevant and tiny actually has a potential huge impact on much more important parts of the system or the platform or the security environment as such. So we help with all of that, of course, also on the commercial side. So let's be honest, there are many organizations out there who simply do not have sufficient resources internally to do the things, because they don't have enough people, or they don't have people with enough knowledge to be able to do like ICT audits, security audits, and all of that, so they need to outsource. And so commercial work is to be done there, to draft the contracts properly, set the SLAs, set the liabilities of the parties. What happens if they run and tell you that everything is fine, and then it turns out it wasn't fine, and all of that, real life. So that's what we do. And then, of course, if something goes wrong, we can also litigate and claim damages and whatnot. But of course, I believe everyone still prefers rather to prevent than have to act when something goes wrong. But things go wrong every now and then, so you need to be prepared for that as well.
Yeah, it's super complex. It's especially for international companies. I know you were saying, Peter, especially when you have, in Europe, you have different languages, you have data centers in different places, and so we need you. I need some help.
Yes, yes. We cover most of Europe, so we can easily, as a single point of contact, really just do it multi-jurisdictional. We do a lot of projects like this.
Very good. All right, before our final thoughts, I'm going to ask if anyone has questions one more time. No. Okay. So for our final thoughts here for the audience, I would love for you guys to just give your insights on where companies should be really focusing their investments right now when it comes to cyber resilience as we tackle this huge beast. I'm going to start with you, Jan, because you're right next to me.
I think that the core of all, especially in the gaming industry, it's very similar like the financial industry, because there are similar type of the products or systems. And from my point of view, everything starts with the secure development. So you want to develop your application very quickly. You want to make a short time to market, etc. But the cybersecurity or security in the DevOps, it's very important. And I think, and I can see it in our project, that the security in the development is very important, and it should be the area where the company should the focus, because with the weak application or weak development systems, you are bring the weak into your productions, and it's vulnerable for the attacks.
Okay, and Marco.
Definitely AI from my perspective. That's again, I think it's going to be a game changer technology. Definitely, that as an organization, you don't want to stay behind. Maybe you're gonna do some mistake at the beginning, but I think in the long run, you're gonna see the benefit, especially when the technology is gonna mature enough. And I mean, here, Bulletproof, we have started a journey, so we are here to help. If someone is interested, more than happy to have deeper talk about it.
Brilliant. I'm going to go to Peter for the next thought.
Well, I think the key message I would say is that we already actually, all of us mentioned a couple of times, so to understand that cyber resilience and cybersecurity is no longer about ticking boxes. It's a dynamic process. It needs to be done regularly. It's not that you once implement it and it will stay good for another 20, 50, 60 years. You need to do the constant review, constant assessment, reassessment, and so on. But it's also a great opportunity because with a number of projects, first with GDPR, but then with cybersecurity underneath one implementations, it actually opens a lot of options for optimization in the organizations. Because then you start, because you have to looking at the various procedures and policies you have in the company, and you notice that sometimes they don't make sense. Or that you have an incident and your incident reporting line involves like 8 different people going up and down, and you need it quick. It should be 2 people at most, IT manager and someone on the board, and you press the button because you need to react quickly, and can't be 8 people because 3 of them can be on sick leave, 2 on holidays, and then you basically do nothing because you are unable to do anything. So it's really a great opportunity to look through the systems, getting rid of some stuff which is redundant but somehow stayed there because everybody forgot about it. It's about simplifying the things, making the procedures clearer, shorter, crispier, and so on, and it gives a great opportunity of doing that. Because that you have to do because there will be harsh fines coming and so on, so everyone has to invest in it. And otherwise, nobody probably would be ready to invest money into going into these optimization reviews and so on, because it costs a lot of money, and most of the organizations unfortunately think there is no added value or business advantage of doing those things, so why to spend money on these things if everything more or less functions properly, so why to spend money? And here you have to spend this money anyway, so use this opportunity to maybe review and improve other things which are even sometimes not directly related to cybersec.
Thank you so much. And Gert-Jan, any final words on cybercrime for the iGaming space you wanted to leave us with?
Oh.
I surprised you with that one, sorry.
Surprise. No, not really, to be honest. Everything I said before, like we have many education materials, yearly reports on the state of cybercrime. And also, if you ever need a link to any international law enforcement agency or national agencies, if you want to know how to contact them, please talk to me afterwards. And sorry, I didn't prepare a better answer to this.
That was my fault. I surprised him.
Tips and tricks? No, never. It's too dangerous.
Okay, well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our fantastic panelists, and enjoy the rest of the event, everybody.